me too.
Yep. And now we are ready for SUSE QE Tools Workshop. So today, Marius will introduce the latest feature that we have implemented in connecting OpenQA and QAM bot. So Marius, tell us.
Yes, so that feature is about the approval of incidents which can be blocked by failed OpenQA jobs. And this feature will allow you to unblock the approval despite failing OpenQA jobs, which can be useful in some cases, I assume. And you can do that by creating an OpenQA comment. And that's the ticket I'm talking about. I can also just drop a link here if you're interested in the chat. And from there, you can also check out the link under acceptance criteria 1, which has the format which will be used, or that's basically the format expected in those comments. And as you can see, you have to specify the incident ID and the reason. And the OpenQA job ID is basically implicitly given by making the comment on the right job. So if you add a comment like this, it will only unblock the incident that is specified here. So if the same failing job blocks multiple incidents, it will require a specific comment for both incidents. But the idea here is that we maybe only want to unblock one incident, so you have to specify the ID. Yeah, that's actually almost all of it. I must say I'm not very familiar with the QEM workflow, and that pull request was just some first, maybe not completely first, but second or third thing I did in the QEM bot source code. Yeah, so for me it was also a bit new, and I'm not sure whether or where I would actually find some interesting incidents in production which are currently blocked by failed jobs but maybe shouldn't be. So I actually asked in engineering infra in our Slack channel whether somebody has some examples or actually just likes to try out the feature, but I haven't got any feedback yet. So maybe somebody likes to use it and can give feedback. That would be great. In case you have feedback, just leave a comment here in this ticket. And no, nobody has since, well, today I haven't looked, so I wouldn't know. Yeah, so basically that's this feature. Yeah, by the way, that's done in the QAM bot. So that bot is
Could you
basically,
zoom in a bit and maybe show us the logic because or like the pull request?
yeah, it's not really so interesting if you don't know the code, but I just wanted to show the repository that is the interesting component. Yeah, it basically looks for the list of incidents from the dashboard, and then it tries to check whether it has any failed OpenQA jobs. If there are any, it wouldn't approve the incident. And yeah, we just made it look like, just made look for OpenQA comments then if there is a failure. Actually, the whole architecture of this thing is to look at the QEM dashboard. That's how it looks like, but unfortunately the QEM dashboard has no comments. So we need to query OpenQA for that directly, which kind of breaks the current architecture. I mean, now we have direct accesses in that stage to OpenQA, which we haven't had before. But well, I suppose it works.
But you can sell it as a feature. That means that whenever the approval runs, or at this time, it looks at the current states of comments. So regardless when the last status snapshot was synced from OpenKey into the dashboard, which we want to have cached because every viewer of the dashboard gets the cache results and doesn't need the results being fetched at this moment for performance reasons. But the comments are evaluated whenever the approval run is conducted. And
Yes,
that meaning that any comment at this time can be relevant, can still be evaluated.
yeah. By the way, it just uses that Python module, which you can find here. But likely you are already aware of that anyways, and also plain use of requests or whatever HTTP library you have would actually do. But here that module was used, so I just used that here as well.
Okay. And
Yeah.
can you show again the exact pattern that is evaluated here?
Okay. By the way, that's not how we ended up. So I actually used proper PyTest fixtures in the end, and not that generic decorator code. And right, where's the regex? Must be somewhere.
There it is below this comments, below this discussion.
Yes, right.
980.
Yeah, so that's basically just the same as you saw in the ticket.
Dennis, you raised your hand.
I saw it.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, is there also a button as it is for on the UI for in the comments when in the job you can there is a button for the review, right?
No, I'm not quite sure what you mean, but no, there's no comment on OpenQA jobs. Let's just go to somewhere, just to see what you mean, but
Yeah, if you open a job
but
comments, there is
but
this label and the side of left side of the
yeah, you
uh,
mean the right side.
yes, the label, the tag.
Center side.
Yes, is there something like this or no?
No, there's nothing.
Second, yeah,
There's nothing like this, because that wouldn't be an official OpenQA label. I would also be hesitant to add a feature like that here, just hard coding it in the code at least, because OpenQA should not be concerned with that. We would implement some way to customize these comments for
We could
specific.
think of a solution like in the instance specific config file, we could provide an additional string that we would like to provide that.
what's the difference now between this the acceptable for and the label.
A label is something recognized by OpenQA itself following that syntax. And
Probably you mean the force result label in particular?
Yes, the force result.
Right.
Yes.
So good that you asked. Force result label means that the job is completely, the result of the job changed, which affects all maintenance issues which are linked to this job. Let's say you have a job which is part of the so-called aggregate tests, and you force the result of that one to be soft failed or true, or passed, which are both considered okay results, then the job will not block any approval for all incidents. The feature which we are talking about here means that it will still block the approval, a failing test will still block the approval of all incidents except for the ones where we specify certain comment. Marius, I think I looked up 2 examples which we can show. Would you please go to this job first,
yes,
which are
and
linked here?
some further note about the question.
Yeah.
Of course, if you use force result, that really affects the result on OpenQA level, so that, okay, in this case, blue box wouldn't be red anymore, but it would be green or yellow. And of course, if you just use that comment here, which isn't really a label on OpenQA level, if you use that, then well, the job would still be red.
But it's gonna be approved.
Incident would
For
still
the
be
specific
approved.
incident, but only if there's no other failing job.
But let me.
Yes.
But as far as I know, the bot works like if all the jobs are green, then approves the incident. So
Yes.
it does. So if you force the results, then doesn't make any difference from what the review this new feature does, right?
For that one incident, not. So let's look into examples. Marius, could you go to the link which I've provided?
Yes.
So,
okay, it's an internal page,
well,
but you likely
yeah, it should be because
can share it. I
yeah.
actually didn't connect to the VPN because I thought then I cannot share anything private, right?
Good approach
Of
in this example.
course, I now
Yeah.
step
Thank you.
into that.
Zoom in a bit, please. So what we see here is an OpenSUSE 15.4 leap DVD incident test for Drools and crypt LVM area. As you can see already in the job title, there is incident mentioned 26179. And if you take a look into the settings, if you scroll down further, please, you will find OS test issues, same as incidentally mentioning a single incident. Okay. So let's assume that this failing test blocks the approval of incident 26179 because failing. Then what one could do is to say like, well, I have taken a close look and it's a false positive and the incident needs to be handled ASAP. So we need to push out the according maintenance update as soon as possible. What we can do here is just the same as in before, we could use the force result label. Okay. By that, making this job passed or soft failed, and by that making it acceptable for approval. Like in this format, exactly.
Yes.
So that would mean if there is no other job linked to this incident that would fail, then the according submit request would be approved by QEM bot in the next cycle, like in the next 15 minutes window. The alternative would be to say we want to write this specific comment and put the incident idea here, which is 26179, and provide a reason, like could be a link to a progress ticket, or could be some Bugzilla reference where it's explained that yes, it's a valid issue, but it's not critical. We'll still want to release the maintenance update. And that would keep the job with the result. Marius, could you just put reason? Let's use an example. BSC number 1.
What?
BSC #1, like as a Bugzilla reference.
Ah.
And just hash with a hash in before. That's a common form. No, BSC #1. You know, the same as we
Okay.
pass the links.
To put a bug reference.
Yeah, right. And now submit comment.
Okay.
So you see, this is just a plain comment. It's not a label. It's not something that changed the results of the page. Can you please make sure to refresh the page that we really see doesn't change the result? So it's just a plain comment from the point of view of. But if QEMBot would look over that job, which we could follow in the according log files on the GitLab instance, then we could see that this job would be treated same as passed or soft failed if it's looking for the approval of incident 26179. Now, this example is really not a useful case where one would use this comment because it's about incident 26179 anyway. So let's take a look into another example, which is this one, the next job.
Okay.
So what you can see here is that this is part of aggregate tests, and you see a big list of base test issues. The specific job is in the development group, so don't worry if we experiment with that one because it's ignored by QEMBot anyway. You take Maurice, if you click on job groups header, then you will see, yeah, it's in development. Okay. So, but what we have here is a long list of issues. So the release of all these issues would be blocked by this failing job result, right? And what we see is that this job fails. If you please, could you please go to the details page? So something about multipath, okay? So what we could say is that, well, a multipath related test fails. So to be on the safe side, what we could say is that we definitely still want to block any multipath or iSCSI related updates, because without that test, we don't have full test coverage. But there might be, let's say, a Firefox maintenance update that needs to be released soon because it's might cover a critical security issue. Okay, so could you go back to the settings page, please? And let's assume from this long test list, there are certain updates. I mean, you can just follow these repo links and we will see what packages are included there. So,
for instance, just the first.
Yeah, exactly. Just pick the first one and go to x86-64. And you see like, okay, so there's an update for update alternatives. Zoom in a bit, please.
Yes.
Right. So already from the RPM packages, we know that this is update alternatives. Okay. And knowing tests, we might say like, well, okay, if the multipath test fails, then we have already covered any step for update alternatives, or the test is just not relevant for update alternatives, but maybe update alternatives needs an urgent security fix released. So how would we add an according comment to say we want to not block the incident 24405 on this job? So Marius, could you show us the example, please?
Yes. Okay, I don't have the clipboard anymore. Yeah, maybe it would be nice if we could insert that automatically. So of course I would use that incident number. That's the incident number in the URL,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And then it would just go here and
yeah, and as reason, you could in this case just invent something like either underscore separated or something like with quotes and say update alternatives needs to be released ASAP, multipath not related.
And here you can add multi-lines of review acceptable for, or if you want to approve also other incidents.
Yes, you can either have multiple comments or you can use multiple of those statements within the same comment. At best separate them by new lines. And then what QMBot does, it goes over the list of all open incidents. And for every incident, it takes a look into the comments. So for incident 24405, it would take a look if any job that is failing matching that comment, this job would match. And then it would treat the job the same way as a past or software job. If it would take a look into then what's the next issue? Go to the settings page, please.
wait. Yes.
The next incident is 24699. So for 24699, it would do the same. And if there is an according comment for that, then it would also treat the comment like that.
Yes, basically.
Yeah, that's about it. Marius, where could we see, let's say, if we want to follow that automation process, where would we be able to see the follow the flow?
I don't think there's a good UI, but you can actually just go to GitLab and I think it's QA maintenance and somewhere there.
In bot.ng, we have the pipelines.
Then you of course see many different pipelines. What we are interested in is the approval pipeline.
Yeah, these are all single step pipelines. So it's easier if you go to the jobs instead of pipelines directly. And yeah. And then you find by name, you find the sync incident, sync aggregate, sync smelt, approve incidents 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, so approve incidents would be the interesting one.
Exactly. And then?
Yeah, then you can search for whatever you're interested in.
Yeah, basically it's longer list from output. Could you zoom in a bit, please? It's alternating between mentioning incidents and jobs. What it means with, yes, so what it means with jobs is OpenQA, jobs and incidents is what we have just discussed.
Yes, so here it maybe approves that incident and therefore looks into jobs and sometimes log apparently if some job has not been found.
So one example which we had was incident 26179. Could you please search for 26179?
Wait, that's the other one, right?
26179. 179.
the other one should also occur here, right?
So why, if somebody has a question like why is 26179 not approved?
Yeah, it's definitely because it is logged here as having failed jobs in incidents. And of course, that ran before we added any comments, so that has no effect.
Right, that was the previous cycle 22 minutes ago. Which, but also, I mean, this is an example where it says has failed job in incidents. So, you know, in incident tests, that's like specific to that incident. So it wouldn't be approved anyway. We can find other examples from here. For example, if you go from the top of the list, we should find examples which have failed jobs in aggregates.
Can I ask why the logs don't show any approve? It show only failed or
Yes,
Maybe
it does show.
here
Yep.
it says incidents to approve, and then it's a not so lengthy list at this point.
Right.
But they show.
So why is the list of logged incidents much longer than the one that is approved? Well, because, you know, this job runs every 15 minutes or so, and there are not so many changes within 15 minutes. And so that's why I would even assume it's a pretty normal case that no request will be approved during many cycles. Because simply the result status doesn't change and there are no new requests coming in and or tests haven't finished yet. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Right. So let's find an example which says has failed job in aggregates.
Sorry, do you want me to?
In line 53, it says incident 25162 has failed job in aggregate. So that's an example where we could say like, well, okay, that's failing because of aggregate test results. So we might find in that case that it's worthwhile to take a look, like, can it be unblocked by using that new commenting feature?
Yes, by the way, is that feature actually something you should do, or is it just the last resort if any other
Yeah, good question. So I would say from the top of my head, we have that noted down on some QA maintenance workflow description. But from the top of my head, so please guys correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, the best case is that jobs are okay, meaning that they are passed or soft failed. So if jobs fail, then one should take a look into those jobs and make sure to fix them. So in best case, the jobs that show really false positives should be fixed. And if you identify that a job is not a false positive, then, well, then it's the correct case. Then we don't want to unblock the approval. We want it to be blocked until the maintenance request fixes the problem and makes the test pass. The next best steps after that could be to say, let's assume it's a sporadic issue. Then what I would do, I would use the auto review process, meaning we have an according ticket for that. We pull out a regex matching the log file from the OpenQA job for that specific error case with automatic retry in that case on that error. And then the job retries, and if it's passed, then not blocking it. The next best step after that would maybe be the OpenQA retry feature by changing the job templates to retry in any such case. The next if you don't want or cannot do all those options, the next best step after that would then be the point where you need to decide, like, should the job result be ignored for all incidents? Then use the false result. And if it should be only ignored for specific incidents, like critical security update that needs to be pushed out ASAP, then use these QEM bot commenting feature. That makes sense?
For me, it makes sense, yes.
I have a question, but it's not about the feature. Like, we it wasn't supposed that we're gonna get rid of the aggregate jobs.
Some people propose that, but I don't think this is any serious proposal to complete 100%. The aggregate tests make sense because they test how updates work in control. There is a still open proposal to move more jobs from aggregate tests into incident specific. And yeah, that would certainly mean that there would be less cases where aggregate tests need to be unblocked incident specific wise. Pavel?
Yeah, well, I have two things. I have a comment and a question. First, the comment. Every time I work with incidents, I wonder that would be awesome to trigger different test suites for different incidents. Because when there is, a kernel incident, you wanna some tests, but if the incident is like completely different character than, for example, desktop, then it makes no sense to probably run LTP if you have new version of Firefox, right?
Yes.
So yeah, and but still, I would like also to ask why getting rid of aggregates. I find them cool. So if you, Oliver, or someone know what the proposal was, or if you have the tickets, I just wonder why getting rid of aggregates.
Yeah, so let's assume we would have no aggregates tests. Then you wouldn't have any need to bisect an aggregates test for which incident caused a certain error, and you wouldn't need to unblock incidents which are blocked by an aggregates test failing for, as an example that you mentioned, let's say an aggregates test in LTP kernel test failing, and that is blocking a Firefox test. If there would only be incident-specific tests, which might include LTP tests, which might not include LTP tests, that would be up to the test maintainers to decide, then we wouldn't need to put in such special comment. Then we could just say, like, well, ignore all kernel failures for Firefox or something. Pavel?
Yeah, just a small. I have a, let's say, one-liner, which displays you all the updates included in an aggregate test and all the packages they are containing. And I think that this would be useful information to have because, well, especially in, for example, in our clouding containers team, we don't have that much overview about the updates, but when something breaks, we need to go through the incident and we need to manually check which update caused the issue. So I think that it would be nice to have list of packages per update so you can easily go through it and see what may be the candidate of a problem. And this is easily achievable. I have a one-liner for it. So if someone is interested, I can, yeah.
Sure. Phoenix?
I think the hidden message what Bubble wants to show here is this feature is actually cool, but from the perspective of the people who are doing the review, it approaches the problem from the wrong side. Because typically you don't want to approve a single incident, but you want to mark the tests that should not block updates otherwise. For example, if I look at a test run and I see that the issue is in, just random example, in a mosquito test run, if we have one, then I want to state, okay, there is an issue in mosquito. However, every other incident should not be blocked by this one, which means that it would be the complete opposite approach to this
Yes.
suggestion.
Right. I think those solutions could live in parallel. What we worked on is the use case where the need arises from the point of view of a specific incident. So, we have cases where somebody is informally in chats writing Friday afternoon like, hey guys, could you please help to unblock this critical Firefox security update, right? So it's not from the angle of the test is failing related to mosquito packages, but as you phrased it, like the opposite, and that's by intention because it's a different use case. I see the value in your proposal, and I think that could be done as a separate thing. Or do you see that conflicting?
No, not at all.
Right.
Actually, if you want to approach it from that side, it makes absolute sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's keep that thought and not forget about that idea. So first, Michael.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, about this topic, I think we still have an option of soft failing a test. So you still have a way to say this test should not block anything at all for the entire day, even if it makes it soft fail, so you don't see it as red anymore. So you have to keep in mind about it. But there is still an option to make a test completely not a factor for every incident request. And I think this feature presented today is cool because in some cases, again, there is a question from a coordinator that they need one or two specific updates approved, and it's much easier for, I guess, a squad to check, hey, these two stuff are completely unrelated to this failing test. Let's approve this, and then we can think about soft failing the entire thing, because maybe that's more scary because you don't know yet what is causing this, so you don't want to open the gates and approve everything which this failing test is blocking, but you are completely sure that a failure on Firefox should not block something completely unrelated. So
Good point. Yeah, good that you raised it. I would phrase it like this, that this QEM bot commenting feature is a very conservative approach. Okay, so it shouldn't be scary, as you explained, because it's just for that one incident, that one job is excluded. Let's assume that somebody says like, hey, this SAP security issue needs to be handled immediately. And then you find one example where Firefox fails and say like, well, Firefox fail is not related to the SAP update. Let's just unblock the SAP update in this job. It doesn't guarantee that the SAP update is approved because you don't know. Maybe there's an SAP HANA cluster performance test failing, but that's not your job because that's the domain of other domain experts, and they decide in their domain if the according job should also be ignored. And only if there is no failed, unignored comment, no failed, unignored job around, only then the approval is completed. Okay. So is there further feedback or question about that specific feature? Okay. So then maybe let's come back to the idea from Phoenix. So Phoenix, you mentioned another idea. Maybe I could imagine this could be something which now is not so hard anymore to implement in QMBot because we already showed a way of how QMBot can interact with OpenQA comments. So let's think about this shortly. Marius, maybe you could go back to the actual code if that's not too overwhelming. Marius, let's brainstorm a bit. How would you and where would you integrate something like this to say we would have a comment that says review acceptable. No, how would that be? Review acceptable for, and then a certain package name, or probably the inverse.
I'm wondering, would it be a comment on OpenQA level at all?
Well, that's the interface where OpenQA test reviewers can mark individual jobs, right? So I would imagine it would be a similar format, but a different message saying this aggregate test is acceptable for every incident except for something that has mosquito in the name. Or open one of those last example jobs that you had open. Right, so this one, Amaru install multipath remote support server dev, and it does fail in something that looks related to multipath. So what one could write is a comment that says, whenever there is multipath in the according incident package list, it should still fail and it should still block. But in all other cases, it shouldn't.
Yes, you would specify some unblock except for, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, it would definitely be possible.
So where would you put it into the code?
It would be a little bit more complicated. I'm still not an expert about that code base, but you would likely, let me think. You cannot just declare or just make it like where we put that condition in, because you want I'm not sure about the data structures which are available in which point, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I guess I would still
carefully.
start from the same location, right? Because could you explain us the get jobs method? Maybe that one below. No, it was below the discussion. Further up, get jobs. Yeah, in line 94.
Okay, yeah, that simply returns all the jobs for that incident, I suppose. And here we just created an additional loop which checks in the results whether a job has been failing or not, and if it is failing, it additionally checks for OpenQA comments and then just overrides the status to assume it was passed.
Yeah.
So in the end, that filter will not filter it out.
Right. So one could either after line 103 add another call to a different function that checks for the package list, or just do it within the same function. Is job marked acceptable for incident? And
Yes,
within there, take a look
problem
for. Huh?
The problem is just where would the package list come from? So
Yes. So
I'm
first,
not
say look for a specific comment in OpenQA, and then only if there's a specific comment, then query either the dashboard or Smelt for the according package list, or what Pavel mentioned, that there is a solution to get a
Can
package
I
list.
interrupt?
Yes.
Because also the time comes to the meeting comes to the end. I have this question. Now with this solution, everyone can put a comment there, right?
Yes.
This is you don't see a problem on this.
No, because we have full tracing and we know which comment by which user.
Okay,
Is
why you choose this again and not create a new tab with when a job is accident or aggregate with approvals and have a button and just approve this with a list of the accidents and approve with a single click.
First of all, adding another tab here
Yes.
with some very specific content is always problematic. I mean, again, OpenQA is a very generic testing tool and it should not contain code that is specific to QEM workflows. But of course, we could make it customizable. So it would be an instance specific feature, but we don't have any starting point yet in OpenQA to make that to make an instance specific feature as another tab here. It's just that the only starting point we really have are comments, so we usually use that as a starting point, especially if it's not so very clear whether it will be useful anyways in the future. I'm also wondering whether it makes sense to add UI for so many details.
So many details. It's just from the UI perspective, I think it's more beautiful and like you have a tab, you see, okay, this is aggregate jobs. You list all the packages the tester can go and just do, easy task like press the button. Yes, this is okay. We can, and you can comment then I approve this because this and this and that. Simplifies a lot the process and makes it more fast than find all the jobs and all the accidents and write a comment.
Yeah, generally possible. It's just way more complicated because of the actual implementation as well as the aspect which I was described, that we would need to make it conditional, or like an OpenQA wheel, a plugin or something, which is feasible to do. For example, extending the branding port that we have, that we have an instance which is branded for like SUSE specific purposes, and we could make it work based on that.
And OpenQA doesn't really know much. So it could offer you a text box where you enter the incident ID and a button to mark it as approvable. But that's not much better than what you can just enter here.
I can see that, of course, one can be a bit more lazy to just click a checkbox instead of needing to write text or copy paste a string pattern from somewhere else. So
Yes,
see it as the first step for our implementation. And we wanted to gather the feedback from you guys even before we say that we call the story done. But also we have already received the feedback from Phoenix that what we did is, I'm hope Phoenix, I'm not putting wrong words in your mind, but I understood, not useful for you. So something else would have been much more beneficial. So I think it was the right choice to not make a fancy GUI around something which maybe nobody of you or most of you don't need anyway.
Yes, the problem with the GUI is also if you have it, people always say, okay, now we actually want to automate it anyways and want to have an API for it. So if you use comments like this, you always get the API for free because we have one to create comments, and you can always use just the API you already know for creating comments to automate things. So
All right.
that's also maybe a general thought. And it's also just that, like I said, the UI couldn't be really fancy because OpenQA doesn't know much about, so it cannot give you a list of incidents which are relevant and their states and
Yeah, but Marius, that's your developer view. I understand from the user point of view, like, hey, this test is testing incident. Why can OpenQA not, provide me a button for every incident? Because, of course, it could. If you have a hard time to implement that, that's a different story.
yeah, I mean, it's just if OpenQA doesn't know it, okay, it could somehow query the data.
Yeah.
That's always a possibility, but it would feel a bit out of place for OpenQA to do that.
Right. Okay. So that's something to consider for the future. Okay, just a short outlook on in the next week. The topic that we have planned there is we want to gather feedback from all of you. So please be vocal in your feedback about the topic. How do we support in contributions, for example, pull request review in the various repositories like OpenQA or Sorted. So if any of you provide contributions, how do we as a SUSE QE Tools team support and react there? Until then, I would say goodbye and then see you again next week.